Hi there, welcome to the Uke Stuff channel. Today I wanted to talk about what linear tuning is on an ukulele. Now, the ukulele itself comes from another instrument. The rajao was the basis of the ukulele when people moved from Madeira to Hawaii and they were going there to work in the sugar fields, but they also brought their trades with them. And as woodworkers and as musicians and people that built instruments, luthiers of a sort, if not completely, what they did is they based the ukulele off of their knowledge of previous instruments, building it with materials that they had available in Hawaii, and thus we get the ukulele. Now, the original ukuleles were definitely based upon the tuning of the rajao. The rajao has 5 strings and it has what we call reentrant tuning with a high G, G, C, E, A, and you get a re-entrant into that. But somewhere along the way, people decided that they also liked the idea of a low G. And there are many people who will only play low G or linear ukulele. What this means is this G is the G below middle C. Then you get middle C, E, A. Most of it's the same, except for the bottom string. So what this allows you to do is have a melody that goes a perfect fourth lower. Now, I will say that reentrant ukulele for sure matches the vocal range of kids. It's very singable. Anything you can play on a reentrant ukulele, generally a kids can sing. Now, can you go so far up the fretboard that that's tricky? Yes, but I'm talking standard notes. With linear ukulele, however, the low G can actually be too low for many children to sing along with. Then that's just a warning for you. But it does give you a perfect fourth lower to work with from that C down to that G. So you've got your C, your B flat or A sharp, your A flat or G sharp down to your G. The only thing that I find really tricky with linear to worry about, other than remembering that it can go lower if you're used to playing reentrant, is like a chord like an E minor. Now, on a reentrant ukulele, a lot of times the G string is just doubling one of the other notes in the chord, so you don't have to do certain things a different way. But when you have a linear ukulele and you play an E minor chord like this, and you play a 3-finger E minor, what ends up happening is the third note of the chord. So this is your E minor, G, B, G, E. There's a G, and there's your G down there. When you put the third of a chord on the bottom, it sort of destabilizes the chord a bit. And that makes it sound a little weird. So on a chord like an E minor, a lot of times you're going to want to use a 4-finger shape. And by moving it to the 5th of the chord going to the bottom, the chord stabilizes a little more than playing this. You hear the difference? But really, other than that, there's not too many chord shapes you have to worry about as you're playing along or other things. It's just something that if you're, for example, arranging for ukulele, sometimes you'll find out that a particular chord in a particular inversion in this tuning doesn't work the way that you'd want it to. That's not a huge thing to be worrying about. A lot of people love playing with low G ukulele. Some people are very insistent on high G. In fact, I just recently saw on Ukulele magazine an entire article based upon low G, high G, which do you prefer? And the answer is most of us that play ukulele eventually have instruments in both tunings because there are different things that work. The only other thing that I want to mention is that if you do something like chord melody or tablature, some tablature is written specifically for low G tuning. So with that in mind, you really can't play it right on a reentrant instrument because it's using notes that go down in the melody, and if it's played up the octave, it sounds weird because there's a weird jump. That's the only other danger. So some chords might be stacked a little funny if you don't play them for linear, and the other concern is if you have a reentrant instrument, you can't play a linear arrangement. Most of the time, though, a linear ukulele can play a reentrant written song very well, except for something called campanella music. Campanella music lets each note ring as long as possible, and in particular, when you have the A and the G on a reentrant instrument so close together, you will have people that will write to have you play the fourth string in place of the second string G location, because you have a G up here that matches normally your reentrant low G, and that can also be weird. So tablature might not work out if the song was written for campanella or low G and you've got the opposite of what you need. And before we go, I should also mention with baritone, a little bit larger, has DGBE tuning. Baritone, on the other hand, is almost always tuned low D. Now, are there exceptions? Absolutely. There are people who play it high D, so it would be a reentrant instrument. There are people that play a baritone that's tuned like a GCEA instrument. Most of the time I think that would be linear, but nonetheless, you might get the occasional person that even has a high G GCA baritone ukulele. But for the most part, just like ukulele is standardly tuned reentrant high G, a baritone is usually tuned linear DGBE. All right. Thanks so much for joining me for the video. I hope you're having a great day, and I'll be back soon with some more uke stuff for you.